Hi, I'm Frank, by the way. I'm the one who's been hitting me up on Twitter.
Very
I think I told you a little bit about our group, but would you like sort of a roundtable, get to know who we are first?
Yeah,
or? Okay.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Perfect. Well, my name is Frank Foster. I am currently working in IT, fixing Macs, basically. And so my goal here, I'm one of the Swift mentors. So I help guide the group as well as coordinate the group. We're part of a larger initiative that's a partnership between University of Idaho and Apple a little bit. They actually provided us with the curriculum, so we're following through with the Intro to App Development and the App Development with Swift books that they have on the iBook store.
All right.
So yeah, it's kind of neat. They actually send some representatives out to us to help, they want our feedback as much as we want to provide them feedback too. So it's kind of a new thing that Apple's done. In the past, I worked at the Apple Store as a genius for about 6 years. So I went from that to working at a credit union to working where I am now. So that's kind of my little nutshell. I've been doing this since its beginning about a year ago.
Nice.
We've had a few new people join, we've had a few people leave, and so there's been kind of a back and forth with the group, but the goal is to kind of help provide a free resource for people to learn Swift and have a community around it for a while.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's kind of me and Inspire, sort of in a nutshell. We might have Ben show up as well. He's actually from Lewis and Clark State College. He's one of the experts as well that is kind of coordinating with the colleges. So he might pop in later. I guess he's teaching a class until around 6:30 or something. I don't know. He's going to a thing.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that's me, and then we'll pass down the line.
All right. Hi, I'm Tony. I don't have a background in coding at all. I work as an analyst for a company, so all of my coding is panic-induced. Whether it's in VBasic and Excel or building something in the system, it's me and my best friend Google trying to figure out how to get something done, usually on a timeline. And so I was pulled into learning Swift by a partner in crime who learned it swiftly, and so I thought it would be a lot of fun to just come in and learn it alongside him.
Absolutely. That's awesome.
Hey, what's up? I'm Jake. I'm also new to coding. I work in the dental industry in a lab, and I'm into art as well, and I wanted to learn this, so I'm in the group. I'm kind of new. I didn't get on early, so just starting out.
It's about a month, 2 months?
Yeah, a couple months. I like Reddit, by the way, so.
All right.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
I've talked up Apollo a lot as design guidelines and stuff, so it's been a topic of conversation.
That's incredible. Thank you.
Of course.
How you doing? I'm Sean, and I own a cell phone repair business. I've been doing little bits of coding all the way back into the 1980s when I was doing some BASIC, and then learned self-taught HTML in the 90s, and then did very little of anything until recently when I started getting into the Swift program through this program. And so I'm working with that now, and also dabbling in Python.
Sean, are you going to the data science thing?
Yeah.
Okay. We have the following day after this, at the same time, we're doing a data science course with someone who was from Facebook. So they're doing machine learning and Python code and stuff. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Hi, I'm Stacy. I've been with the group for a year now since the beginning. Really no background in coding or computers, anything like that, but something I've always been interested in. So I saw this as a great way to jump in and start learning. Almost written a few apps, but I almost. on to the next one. So yeah, it's
Right.
fun. Yeah, it's a good hobby.
Stacy's definitely been our pro coder that's been learning through the whole thing. So you've come very close to having a couple of things out there. Yeah, and then do you want to take a moment to introduce yourself as well?
Sure. So basically, I wouldn't say I have any crazy, especially considering you go back to the 1980s and coding. Mine's a lot shorter. Back in high school, I got into it, which would have been about 10 years ago now. Really enjoyed it. Thought the whole being able to build something and put it out and have people be able to download it within a few hours, a really cool idea. Ended up going to university for it. When I was there, I got an internship at Apple, which really kind of fast-tracked everything and was a really good foundation for starting. And after I came back from Apple, I graduated, and now I've just been kind of building apps on my own since. I guess I would have graduated 4 years ago now. It's been a fun little period.
Awesome. Well, kind of the reason why I reached out to you and kind of wanted to have you talk to our group tonight was, we're all interested in mobile development. We all, want to move towards, some of us want to be independent developers, or work for other companies, or even just build an app to accomplish, a goal or something. I think Sean is working on an app to help his repair business, so sort of keep track of repairs. And Stacy has a couple different apps, a game, and a couple things going on. And I don't know if we've discussed any of your guys' apps yet.
I have nothing going on.
No, I think we're still in the learning phase.
Learning how to cuss the computer.
Yeah, learning to swear at the computer. And I'm working on an app to help people who play tabletop games keep track of RP, like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff.
No.
Yeah, keep track of their characters and all that sort of stuff. So if they create characters or locations, that's kind of what I'm working on.
My friends and I just started a new campaign, so I'll have to get on your test scores.
Nice. Okay. Well, if you come up here, you're more than welcome to play.
Hey.
But I think, kind of what I was hoping tonight would be is sort of telling us a little bit about yourself, what that path looked like, kind of how you came to be an independent developer, and sort of some of the pitfalls and stuff. I know a lot of us have questions. It might be an intense, grueling session of questions, or talk about development or things that you find interesting, and just sort of keep it open and casual and nothing too serious. But yeah.
Perfect. That sounds great to me.
Cool. Do you have any questions for us before we begin?
No, yeah, I'm sure I'll have some as the talk progresses.
Okay.
But, you guys covered some good pieces. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I guess I just would open it up. I don't know exactly where we want to go next. So,
I think just telling us about your general experience building Apollo and some of the challenges you ran into, how you overcame those, and so forth. I mean, that would be helpful for me at least.
Maybe you can go back to when the idea came to you, what prompted the idea, what made you then move on to develop it from there.
Absolutely. So I guess from the get-go, I've built this and another app, and both apps were basically, the super original idea of just wanting to scratch your own itch kind of thing, where I wanted to build something that I hadn't found a solution for personally yet. So when I started building it, I would still have been in university, and there just wasn't anything much like a great app for cell phone repair. There just wasn't anything out there that ticked all the boxes for me. So I had some extra spare time in university, and I knew employers after university really liked applicants with pet projects on the side. So I figured that might be a perfect one. I could get something I'd enjoy and have a fun project out of it. I basically just got started there. I kind of just made some mental notes of, I guess, what exactly those checkboxes I was looking for were, and kind of hoping at the same time that those would be checkboxes other people had as well. And like I said, I basically got started from there. I found the motivation helps a lot more if it's something much like the cell phone repair stuff, where if it's something you'll you yourself will enjoy and benefit from. It really helps. Because it can be a grueling process to go through, start to finish and putting all those hours in and fixing all those bugs. So if it's something that, you really want to see come to fruition, I think it helps a lot. Whereas if you're just building something, to, I don't know, like help identify which is super helpful, I'm sure, to a lot of people, but it's not necessarily something that you might personally use a ton, so it might be a little harder to get through. So it was something I really wanted, and I basically spent like the next 3 years just grueling through it. And I tried to keep it somewhat public. Like I wasn't just emerging after 3 years with a product. I tried to like talk to some people and see if there was interest there. Because honestly, I probably would have just gone and worked for a bigger company if after year one, no one really had any interest in it. But thankfully, quite a few people seemed to take interest in it, same way I did, and I brought a lot of people into the beta testing program, and and that was really motivating to keep going too, having all these people as part of your program, being able to give you feedback and kind of cheer you as you go on, and who they also want to see it finished. And I basically from there it was mostly just a matter of putting the hours in, like anything, starting a business, woodworking, anything. It's just about fundamentally, it's about putting the time and hours, sweat, blood, and tears into it in order to see it through. Thankfully, the finish line eventually was in sight. And I guess with software, it's never really the finish line, but there was a checkpoint that was sufficient to ship. And I guess I've just been doing that since.
Awesome. Did you?
I guess that was super general. If there's anything more direct there you can focus in on, I'm happy to.
So when you mentioned like bringing other people in, were these people that were just kind of watching the project like on GitHub, or were they people that you knew? Were they kind of like, what did that look like?
At the time, for a lot of it, it was rough enough that there wasn't really anyone to show. But once after about a year, it got to a point where it was something that somebody could feasibly, despite being buggy, people could feasibly use it. So at that point, I think I posted on the Apple subreddit on Reddit and was like, hey, I'm building this product, is anyone interested? And Apple has their test beta program, so they made it really easy to be like, if anyone wants to take it for a spin, here you go. Thankfully there was a lot of interest in it after I showed like the initial like little prototype video. And it was basically, I knew none of them, it was just a large community of beta testers who were able to provide great feedback along the way.
So that was just kind of, I think I remember that post actually. I may have commented, I don't know. No, for me it was more like Alien Blue is dead, we need a new Reddit app that isn't what we have currently.
Oh my god, yeah. And it was funny when I started it, like Alien Blue was still alive and well. It was like the big thing, and then Reddit bought it, and then it went under, and then this was all happening while I was like, should I keep building this? Thankfully I stuck with it, yeah.
So kind of in that same line, when you're developing an app like Apollo that obviously has a lot of competition. You have Narwhal, I think. There's a couple other like Reddit had their own app, and there's all these other sort of competitors. How did you look at that and say, okay, this is something that I feel is valid to bring to the market? Other than, I know this might sound like a really complicated question, but like, how do you deal with looking at the competition? I guess.
That's a really good question. I think to a certain extent it's easy with a service that is as far-reaching as something like Reddit. Like if I was building like a local grocery store app and everybody already loved the existing one, it would be hard to like convert them over. But like Reddit's like such an enormous popular service that if 96% of people hate my app and think it's garbage, and then 4% really love it, like that would be great. 4% of a billion or whatever Reddit is like that's a great chunk of the market. So I knew as long as some people cared, I'd be good. But in addition to that, it was just kind of knowing like what, because honestly, like the apps that are out there right now, they're all great. There's nothing wrong with them. Like I still get people today who are like, I tried your app, I see why people like it, but it's not for me. And it's like, that's totally fair. It's like, it's like a car. So for a pickup truck, it's just, speaks to them more than just go out a Corolla. Like it's, So I think it's important to understand who your audience is, cater to them, and build something that's true to them rather than chasing after every single individual, and then you just end up with this, smorgasbord of an app. But I knew for me, I wanted something that felt like really native to the iOS platform, didn't feel really alien or weird to use, that somebody could hopefully just pick up and be pretty familiar with, and I kind of just stuck through with that because it seemed to speak to people well enough.
I've got plenty of questions, but I want to make sure that we give everyone else a chance to ask.
Right, so the company I work for deals with pharmacy, a lot of private information. When you're looking at security for your app, is there anything special that you've decided you need to address, that's outside of the standard issue Apple security?
Outside of standard issue, I don't know, I'd say that, like a lot of the authentication tokens you communicate like through the APIs with, like you don't want to be too frivolous with those because if somebody, if you did something stupid with them and somebody got a hold of somebody's authentication token, for the next hour they could, I guess with Reddit they could just upload a bunch of stuff, but like you generally want to be pretty sensitive with that kind of thing. But it's one of those things where I'm sure you're the same way, where I try, if Apple's got something like Keychain where it's battle tested, it's in, millions of apps, and that does it for me, like that's what I'll lean toward, because I know if there's ever a vulnerability in it, it'll get discovered quickly, it'll get patched quickly, I'm in the same group as everyone else. But I wish I could say I had the experience that would apply to like a pharmacy level app, but for me, most of the built-in stuff around like the Keychain APIs and everything have been really good for securing user data on the device.
And you're talking about, there's, because I actually just looked at this today, there's the different kind of like, you have core data, you have the NS user information, Keychain, there are those different levels of where you want to keep that information.
Right.
So yeah.
I probably could have expanded a little there. Yeah, like user defaults is great if you want to store like something like user's favorite pet or whether or not they have dark mode enabled. It's super easy to read to, super easy to write to, like really easy to interoperate with. But because if somebody knows that they have dark mode on, I mean, it's not really the end of the world. But the more secure things you want to dip down into, like they have basically a more secure version of that called Keychain, which just has everything encrypted. And to be honest, like accessing it isn't any more difficult really. There's just a few gotchas you got to remember, but they make it really easy to interoperate with that kind of thing. Whereas like if you had like I'm not too much of a pharmaceuticals guy, but I don't know if you had like a prescription number or something you wanted to store, like that's something you can totally do in Keychain, throw it there, and you could be super confident that it's in safe hands. Because if somebody got a hold of that, they'd also probably have like $1 million bug bounty they figured out at the same time.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
It's that awkward question.
Go ahead, Frank, ask the next one.
Well, I guess, we have a large group of people who are, across the whole, the whole of Inspire Idaho. Because we're not just one group, I think there's like 15 other groups across the state.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I think we're one of the first ones, but they've opened up some. We're in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, which if you've never heard of it, it's right next to Spokane, Washington. Which if you haven't heard of that, it's right next to Seattle, which it's a Pacific Northwest joke. But a lot of us are still in that learning phase, that beginning phase. Kind of, you had that internship at Apple. How much of that led to, you kind of had that beginning of coding very early on, but how much of the internship at Apple kind of helped you? And do you think that an experience like that, I don't know where I'm going with this question, but do you think an experience like that is absolutely necessary for someone who's learning to code these days?
Oh gosh, no, not at all. I don't think it's necessary. It's just one of those things where it's like,
or similar to
I don't know, like having a really trainer at the gym or something. You can still totally, turn into Arnold Schwarzenegger or something, but it's just a little thing that helps along the way to make it a little easier. Yeah, because God knows there's people there who could, code circles around me that I wasn't even a super confident, like, from when I started Apollo to where I am now, like, night and day, just going through those years of building, to the extent that when I started at Apple, I was in a completely different place. But it still helped just to, like, make those connections, and, it's just a lot of, motivating to be around people that smart for a summer. But as far as, a requirement, like, I honestly don't think there's any requirement in programming other than, having a keyboard and internet connection. Like, you can,
Sure.
go from there and just build just about anything under the sun.
So in that same vein, looking back with the development of Apollo and the other apps that you've worked on, getting to the point, because I think a lot of questions that we have right now, especially for the group of us that are kind of getting close to that, is like the app submission process, the release of the app. Like, looking back, what would you have changed, and what have you learned from getting to the point of release?
That's a good question.
From the lens of someone who started it 3 years ago and now you're here, like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
from a younger perspective.
Right, no. I'd say one of the best things is, like, just knowing, like, being able to listen to users and as soon as possible if you're building something that is user facing. If you're building something that's like you have very much a set idea, so if you're building like a really awesome flashlight app, you might be a little more like, I know what I need, this is going to be that. But if you're building something a little more abstract that has a fair bit of users behind it, really being able to, like, listen to them and hear, what do they want out of the app, it's so valuable, because you can be like, I'm going to build this app and it's going to be great, it's going to have these features and people are going to love it. But so much of that is like you hoping you know what people want, but fundamentally being able to, hear them and get like 30 emails a day about the exact same feature is very confidence inspiring, that if you go after that feature, it's going to be a wise idea. So I guess, it sounds obvious, but just trying, like, making sure you're reading the emails and understanding what users want and, like, replying to them and being part of the community is, like, super helpful in terms of, understanding your own product kind of thing. And other than that, yeah, it's the whole thing's been a learning process, but I'd say, like, being afraid to ship it finally, that's a tricky one, because it's so easy to be like, have a never-ending to-do list that keeps getting longer and longer before you can ship it. And I definitely fell victim to that. And I'd say try to keep your eyes on the prize and make sure you get it out there eventually, because so many people, it's just like, I think it's one of the most commonplace things in programming is having a bunch of side projects that are super cool, but, like, fundamentally don't end up shipping for whatever reason. Like, that last 10% is just too daunting, and then something that is also shiny catches your eye and you run after that, and then you have, like, all these robots in the corner of your apartment that are just about ready to do something cool. So like the two best things I'd say are just, like, listen to the users and try to make sure you really grind through and get to that point where you can ship the app, because that's definitely the most satisfying part of the whole experience.
So that kind of leads me to sort of a follow-up question, because I know one of the things I appreciate about Apollo is how you have sort of a planned, scheduled sort of update system that you use. You kind of have, I don't know if you want to speak to that and kind of describe what that is.
Yeah.
How you balance that when maintaining the app. Because, like you said, you get to that point where you're like, I gotta ship it, but there's always more work to do, right? So.
Right. And I think it's just a matter of making sure that, like, that's the great thing about software. It's like, if I was building, like, a pickup truck, I can't have, a ship with 3 out of the 4 wheels and be like, I'm gonna do a really great 4th wheel update later. Like, it needs everything from the get-go. But with software, you're pretty much free to really sanction everything up and say, I really want this one great update and I'll ship that. And that doesn't necessarily have to impede you from doing the next thing. So I really found it helps to like listen to what the users want. So they want feature A, sit down and work on that for a while, push that out, make sure they're happy, then work on another thing. Because that's another thing I found people really appreciate in the App Store, especially, is being able to like go onto an App Store page and see like last updated, within some reasonable time frame. Like if you go to an app and you're like, oh, this app looks really cool, last updated, September 2017, you're like, okay, maybe not. And for all like that developer has to work on the craziest 2.5-year update in the world. But there's no way you could tell that from the App Store. So shipping out consistent updates really keeps users engaged. So I definitely, I guess it's another thing. Just don't make your updates too massive. Try to like separate things into core features that users can kind of chew on a little bit.
Cool. Yeah, because that's, I think that's one thing that we haven't yet gotten to, but it's definitely something we look at as like, hey, we're gonna, I definitely know that a couple of us are aiming towards getting to the point where we want to put an app on the App Store, but keeping that consistent update, keeping that schedule. I think you speak to those excellent points. Kind of following up with that, we don't have to talk, because I guess one of the toughest things that I see on the App Store is the conversation around monetization. And we don't have to talk numbers, but when you're looking at people who, especially on Reddit, you see a lot of people who are like, I don't want subscriptions in my app, I want to pay full price, but developers are saying nobody pays full price for an app, and all that sort of stuff. How did you come to the decision, and maybe explain it a little bit for everybody who hasn't yet downloaded Apollo. Explain a little bit about what the monetization looks like, because I think that's, for all of us who want to be those future developers, like that's a consideration, right? Is like, how are we going to make money at this?
Right.
But yeah.
I'd say fundamentally just be flexible, because so much of it is unfortunately almost like trendy. Not in that you're trying to follow like a fashion trend or anything, but you kind of gotta like, I find user preferences ebb and flow. Like if I would have launched Apollo in 2010, like it probably would have just been like a $4.99 app, call it a day, fuck your uncle kind of thing. But oh my god, like if I would have put Apollo for $4.99 in 2017, I probably would have got 12 downloads over the course of a year. Like that's just not how the App Store works anymore. So you kind of gotta like, I guess kind of put your feelers in and see what the other apps are doing. And for me, for Apollo at least, it's free to download, which is great because Apollo doesn't really have any ongoing cost to myself at a base level. So I can give it out for free. People can use it. They can never pay for it, and it's no hair off my back. But I really, this one app by a guy named David Smith that was called Donger++. It had a really cool model where you could, if you were enjoying the app, you could just leave a tip, however much you wanted, and it would unlock some extra features. And I always thought that was really cool because it felt more personal, the whole tipping thing. And it also, as a developer, it was a nice incentive that, if you're using the app, a few hours a day, some people might say like, oh, $2, like, come on, I can give you $10, heaven forbid. So I found that was a really great monetization model. But even with subscriptions, I think it's like at a fundamental level, it's just really understanding your users and being able to make a good case for why your model is what it is. Because I honestly think you could have, a subscription app for $99 a month, and you could post it to Reddit or Twitter, and people would eat it up if you could find a way to justify it. I think they get pissed off when, if an app is, $10 to use it forever, and then suddenly they switch to $5 a month, and you're trying to do the math, and you're like, nothing's changed. Now it's $50, $60 a year when it was $10 for a lifetime, and the developer doesn't offer a lot of explanation as to why. And I think that's what really, drives people crazy, which, we're consumers too. I mean, that's completely understandable. That would drive me crazy too. So I think it's, with Apollo, I was able to say, in addition to the tipping model, there's a model in the app where there's some server-side features that, servers have monthly costs. So that has ongoing costs to me, and I was able to explain to users and in the app that there is a subscription attached to these features, but the reason is because they have monthly costs to me, and so those need to come from somewhere. And with that, I almost got no blowback. It was phenomenal. Like you hear such horror stories about apps going into subscription models, but thankfully it went super well for me, and I think it's just a matter of being able to articulate to users why it is the way it is, and if they can understand that. I mean, if you have a good argument, there's not really anything they can say, kind of thing, because you're being reasonable, right? Yeah.
Well, I think you have a very unique. I think you have a unique position in the App Store because you have kind of this built-in community around your app. You know, you have
Right.
the subreddit, you have the Apple subreddit, like you have all that can give you that feedback, or you can like. Again, I spend way too much time on Reddit. That's why I love your app. But like it's obscene. I should probably be fired from my job. But I remember that conversation, and it was really, it was kind of refreshing when, especially in the games industry, there's a lot of changes that happen in the video game industry, and no conversation, and no communication,
Right.
or no perceived communication. And so it's refreshing to see, like, someone come out with that and say, hey, here's this larger conversation that we have to have about, with your fans, with your audience, and say this is, let's be real here, right? So
yeah, and I think it speaks to people. Well, the funny thing is, like, you don't, like, having the community helped 100-fold, but, like, I've seen a lot of apps that just before they pop up, say the monetization screen as to how they make money, they just kind of put a little blurb out there that's like, the app's free, here are the features you get for free, and here's why they cost some money. It's made by like an independent developer, and they need to eat. It costs money to keep maintaining the app. And I mean, as long as you can kind of give, even if you don't have a bustling community, just to be able to put like a little blurb up there and say, this is the gist of my app. I'd love if you supported it. And I think that really speaks to people rather than you being just this nameless corporate entity that's trying to, steal their grocery money kind of thing. Just creating any like personal connection, I think, really helps a lot to legitimize your product.
Rather than just a buy button with no explanation.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, Amazon can get away with that, but I don't know if you can.
Yeah, that's true. Well, we have Ben join us. Ben's from Lewis Clark.
Lewis Clark State College. Yeah, nice to meet you, Christian. Thank you so much for talking with our group.
Oh, pleasure's all mine.
Yes, I wanted to introduce you.
Oh, you guys already.
Yeah, we already went around because of the introduction.
Great.
Do you want to tell Christian a little bit about yourself as well, since you kind of joined the stream?
Sure. I'm a college professor. I teach about media and communication. So most of the stuff that I teach about is the surface fun software stuff, and I'd like to learn a little bit more about what goes into it. And I'm really interested in the kind of ethical concerns of coders, because I think it's not really been a big part of computer science, and it's picking up steam, I think, as of late, especially with a lot of debacles happening in large companies like Apple, Google, and my brothers at Facebook. And I think they're starting to pay attention to the fact that these systems that most people in the world use, are developed by a few people, and don't have everyone's interests in mind. So I have a lot of those interests in my teaching, and that's why I'm here to learn how to code and also to keep myself accountable with these folks.
That's awesome. Yeah, my degree in its final year, I think they added like an ethics course, and it was legitimately like one of the most interesting courses of the whole degree. So I'm really glad more places are integrating that, because it's super important. It's super easy not to think about it and accidentally make a catastrophe.
Yeah.
Whereas knowing a few principles and just thinking through the process, it goes a long way.
Ben's been here the same amount of time that I've been here, and Stacy and Sean. We're kind of the old guard of the group.
Oh, nice. Gotcha.
Does anyone else want to? I know Stacy's got questions, but probably.
I kind of have a question. Other than
Sure.
your schooling and your internship with Apple, was there anything else that helped you learn? Swift in general?
Well, I mean, fundamental. As much as I love my university, like fundamentally, I guess everything I do full time now as a job, I would say is self-taught. I learned a bit in high school just on my own, and through university, I just kind of taught myself some. Well, I guess Swift wasn't around then, but I taught myself Objective C back then, because I'm sure universities are better now, but this would have been like 8 years ago. They were very, at least mine was very theory based, which was great for setting an awesome foundation, but you could very easily graduate without necessarily knowing how to like build an app, for instance. So there was, it was in your best interest to kind of have some side projects. And I think fundamentally the whole side project thing is what really was the biggest learning factor for me. Because that might just be a personal thing, but I find like that was one of my biggest mistakes I found at the beginning is I'd like sit down and read a book on like iOS development or watch like 10 videos and be like, oh my god, I learned so much, and then you go sit down with an editor, a code editor, and it would, I guess it just went through one ear and out the other. I guess personally I really need to like get my hands dirty with something in order for it to stick. So I found I did a lot less of that and a lot more of let me build a very simple, like a flashlight app or a very, very simple to-do list app, and then just gradually challenge myself more and more. And if I get confused and have no idea what I'm doing all of a sudden, that's when I'll go out and search for a resource. And I'll still read some stuff here and there, but I just found personally having some side projects where you really are able to like get your hands dirty with stuff and build things was definitely like far and away the best way I found to work.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you.
I think
no problem.
a lot of the materials we use in conjunction with Apple's own program is we use the Hacking with Swift. I know we've all hit up Stack Overflow a couple times for getting questions answered. I always find
Stack
those
Overflow
are
is awesome.
great resources too.
I mean, do you have any other resources that you use that when you run into problems or?
With what, sorry?
Do you have any other resources other than like Stack Overflow and say, what's your secrets? Like what's your go-to, I have a problem, what would be your first?
No, honestly, Stack Overflow is probably the primary one. I found, like you guys are probably the same, like just about anything has probably already been asked there. And if not, you can ask there, and as long as you do it in a way that doesn't step on their toes, they're normally pretty happy to point you in the right direction. So honestly, I asked a lot of questions in Stack Overflow over the years. Some questions that I'm sure somebody would read now and think it was the stupidest question ever, but it didn't make any sense to me, so I was happy to ask. So I think it was a lot of asking questions, and just a lot of Googling in general, I guess. Like if there wasn't a Stack Overflow question for it, just reading, Joe Blow's blog on this tutorial on how to implement like MapKit or something. Was a great resource rather than trying to read through Apple's documentation that's a little scientific for my liking, and try to build it up from there. Like a lot of people have great blog tutorials where they'll be building a project where they're like, how to use this API and we'll build a little fun thing around it. And those were always great, but yeah, I wish I could say there was some underground, Slack channel where they had all the best stuff, but it was just Stack Overflow and Google, basically.
See, what we need to know now is your Stack Overflow username so we can go back and
I don't even know if I have that account anymore. I've nowadays I'm a little more, I don't know if I've gotten better at Googling or what, but I can thankfully find most of the questions now. But yeah, there's some old Stack Overflow question there. It's just probably the dumbest questions ever.
Gosh, I feel like I've got most of my questions answered. I mean, does anybody?
Well, I have one kind of about work. I think a lot of the participants around the state, at least the way that the program was first pitched at them was, there's this, billions and billions of dollars, economy on Apple's App Store, and if you learn how to code in Swift, you could take part in your rural town. I mean, you're probably a great example, being in, at least for people from the States, have no idea, where Nova Scotia is, but you've made a really big splash on the world, of Reddit users who also happen to have an iPhone and they didn't have like a very convenient option for them. And now you have a career, you know, in this, and I think most people are saying, how do I get to that step of, okay, once I know how to code, how do I have that career? What does it look like in working in software today? Is it, here's your job at this office and you're grinding down from 9 to 5, or is it more freelance where you take on this project and then you're done and then you got to find another one while you're currently working on a project? Or is it a mix of both? How does it look for you, and do you think that you're an example of how it is for most people who work in software?
I would think I honestly had a kind of a weird path. I don't think it's very typical. I was lucky too that that Apple internship I took, they thankfully paid pretty well, so I was able to kind of just take a year or two and just probably a terrible financial idea, but just burn through what they had into this goal. And I knew coming out of it, even if it didn't go anywhere, hopefully made a little bit of money, hopefully gave me something cool on the resume, and I could just go apply to, you know, maybe reapply to Apple or something and go that way. But thankfully, this one thing on my first try did pretty well, which, you know, that seems like a lot of fingers crossed kind of thing. But a lot of people in the industry, they seem to enter, like, if I was to do it conventionally, I think the best way would do some side projects, so you're comfortable enough with the industry, something you can show to an interviewer. Like, they really eat that stuff up when you're at an interview. You can say, like, oh, by the way, like, you open your phone and you say, like, this, I built this thing here, and it really, they really come alive for that kind of thing, I think, in my experience at least. And then, you know, get your foot in the door kind of thing. And then if you're really loving the industry, you can always, on the side, build some side projects. And if they really get that kind of traction, then you can maybe chase that full time, because outside of work, like, you can do some seriously great things. Like, I was just thinking of Ryan Dykstrom, I believe his name is. Like, he built a really awesome GitHub client when he was working at Instagram, and now he works at GitHub. And it's a phenomenal piece of work just to have been built part-time on its own. And I think that just really speaks to how you can have a conventional job, quote unquote, that you got through conventional means, just through an awesome resume and some great skills. And then you can take something on the side that you're really enjoying, and if that goes well, turn that into something else. Yeah, I guess that makes a little sense. But it's really just about, I think it really just helps to have something that you can show people. And then once you get your foot in the door, really the world's your oyster, and you can do whatever you want with that.
Do you see there becoming a higher demand for jobs for mobile development, or do you see, because I've heard from some people like, oh, it's a little saturated, maybe mobile development may not be the way to go, maybe branch out, become a larger, more versatile developer, like?
I mean, it could be. It still seems to me like the pool of mobile developers, be it iOS or Android, is still like, there's still way more people wanting talented developers than there are developers. So even if like some other technology is eating into that a little bit, there's still so many that I think you can still comfortably walk in. Whereas like I know just even, you know, there's, once you have an app or two on the App Store and it's decently popular, like the amount of like LinkedIn stuff you get from people being like, we're trying to find an iOS developer, like please, just at least tells me that there's definitely still a lot of employers looking, even if like React Native or something has came in and chewed away at that a little. It's still super. And the other thing is, just because you do one thing doesn't mean you have to do the other. Like, there's lots of people in the iOS community who do all like the native iOS stuff, and then they might dabble in some web and React Native stuff. I think it's probably pretty important to keep your finger on where the industry's going, just because that's the nature of software, is things can change overnight. But yeah, like fundamentally, I would say there's no, if you go into mobile iOS or Android stuff, like yeah, you're still golden for a long time to come, if I was betting there.
Other than, brain stopped. Do you see any supplementary, like other than Swift and Objective-C, do you see other things that would come in handy as a mobile developer? Like what, because Apple's program is very much like, this is Swift, you'll do everything in Swift, Swift is life,
Right.
Swift. Are there other tools outside of that you would say, hey, this is like something that everyone should know, or that is really in demand, or something that you found helpful?
I haven't found anything that I would say like, in addition to Swift, learn this, or you're gonna sync. Like you can get so far on just knowing Swift. Like there's people probably out there doing next level stuff just doing it in Swift. So like you're totally fine. But if you wanted to really like get an A+ in your homework, I think it's really helpful like to at least get your feet wet with some of the web stuff. Just because it's really hard nowadays to build an iPhone app that like doesn't connect to the internet in any capacity. There's like I'm sure there's some of them, like if you were a calculator app, for instance, sure. But just about anything is going to connect to some API or some internet service, and knowing how potentially to build your own version of that. So if you were communicating out to a social network, and it had some, either it went away or it was missing something, being able to dabble on the back-end web side of things and maybe build like a little small thing that your app can communicate to, it really helps a lot just because the internet is so prevalent that being able to work not only on like the receiving end on the phone, but also know a little bit about how to build what the phone talks to, it kind of completes the whole picture, I guess, for lack of a better term. And that's another thing that you don't have to be doing that part as a full-time job, but just being able to know a little bit goes a long way. And I mean, there's like Node.js, which there's probably more articles out there on that than there's Swift. So I'm sure you could, there's no lack of ways to get into that if you wanted to. But that's really like down the road. Like you could, keep your like full of Swift for a very long time.
Cool. Ben, did you have any follow-up questions? I know you kind of migrated this topic in.
Well, yeah, I just think that I was just trying to think of what some of the other users, participants in the program might ask, and a lot of them seem to be about the jobs. I think it's a great idea. It's a great point that you can give them something concrete, and that it always is better if you can show them something you've built, rather than saying, hey, I know how to do this. You can say, this proves that I know how to do this because here's the product. So that's what a lot of our learners are working towards, is producing something that they can have on their phone to be able to show someone else to say, I did this. Whether that's, I just want to work, 2 days a week, on projects for friends, or like some folks are interested in starting their own company, because we found that there's we're not in a terribly like huge population area, and so a lot of companies that might be based here, they'll hire people just based on cost who are in Hawaii or Los Angeles or Seattle or Portland. You can work remotely and say, deliver this app. But a lot of companies have even come to this group once they've heard about it and said, I'm a company from Denmark. There's this company in the next town over in Post Falls, and they produce allergy medications in their facility, but it's an international global company, and they said, we'd really like to have this app for our employees, and we would love if someone local could produce it, right? Someone in this area. And we said there is nobody essentially who's meeting that need for, just like people want to have local food or to support local businesses, we don't have a local business that just does apps. And so it's great to be able to prove that you can do that if you're someone in the area.
Yeah, and so many of the more rural areas, there's nothing like. I almost feel bad, like I'm not in a super rural area, but I'm in Eastern Canada where there's not a lot. And like whenever an app needs to be done, there's like I think like 3 of us who always get an email.
Yeah.
So it's tricky. So I think definitely, even if you're not working remotely, you can probably just move to a small town and hope there's probably somebody who needs an app done and would like to do it.
I think we kind of reached the end of the road. Do you have any questions for us? Is there anything else that we can answer for you about our group or our projects or?
No, I guess it's just been really cool meeting you guys. It'd be awesome if, just to keep touching base at all. Like if you go to ship any of your apps, it'd be really cool to see, or just hear what you're doing. It sounds like you got some really cool ideas going, and it would be neat to see. From sitting in my apartment most of the day, I don't get to see a lot of people
Sure.
starting from scratch to build something cool. So it would be neat to see the process firsthand.
We do have a group Slack channel that's for all the different groups across, or it's a Slack workspace.
Oh, awesome.
That's for all the different groups. If you'd like, I can send you an invite to it.
That'd be phenomenal. Yeah.
Communication with all of us, and especially seeing, because I know one of the challenges we see is that we have some groups that are like way ahead and some that are way behind, and a lot of questions get asked on there. I don't think it's as big of a forum as we'd like it to be, but having, the nice thing is we do have the Apple contacts in there too, so they're a great educational resource. So it's been nice to have that direct communication, but I can definitely send you an invite to that as well. So
that'd be awesome. Yeah, no, that sounds awesome.
We'll keep in touch with you definitely in the future too, because depending on how this program goes, and it seems to be growing, we're always in need of guest speakers, and we'd be happy to fly you out if and when we have the funding and stuff for that. In the building that we're in right now, they're a part of this program, but they do many other projects, not just connected to coding or education, but various forms of entrepreneurship and tech. And they host a summit each September, and I think they already have all their guests slated for it's called the Think Big Festival. But they bring in people from the Navy, from robotics, from AI, all over the world to come to this town and show them what people here are doing. And it's kind of just like a celebratory summit of here's what's new in technology and here's what's happening kind of in the future. And I'm sure they would love to talk with you and possibly bring you as a speaker in the future, especially.
Oh, that would be incredible. That sounds like a rock star event. That would be so cool. Yeah, no, please, by all means.
For our town, it's a really big deal. But
Jim Cook is there.
No,
I'm kidding.
No, I'm sure it's Halifax isn't that big either, so I'm sure whatever we're doing for you guys is super big for me too.
Well, Christian, thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute
Oh
pleasure.
gosh,
Thank you.
Thank you for giving me a break in my monotonous evenings. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And if you're ever in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, feel free to hit us up.
Oh my god. Absolutely, you got it.
Awesome.
Thank you guys.
Thank
Take
you.
care, everybody. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Stop.